Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hope at Work podcast. It has been a while. So, this is now the official first episode of season 3, and I'm starting it off right with John Bernadovich. Okay, so John I met at HR Tech in Las Vegas. You know what, John? I feel like HR Tech has become more of an opportunity for people to connect like ourselves than it is to actually sell software. That's okay, though. I'm glad that it's worked out that way. But before John and I connected in HR Tech, I had read his book, HR Like a Boss. So, John, why don't I let you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about who you are, and then I want to jump into your thinking behind the book, if you don't mind.
Sure. Name's John Bernadovich. I live in Bath, Ohio. I am married, and I have 2 wonderful kids. I'm Will and Mallory's dad. I have an 18-year-old son going to Ohio State, and my 16-year-old daughter just got her license. That's big news in our house. It's crazy, as you may know, for those listening, when your kids get those cars and they start driving away, then all of a sudden they start driving away and not hanging out with mom and dad, which is okay. I like to see them growing up and having fun and enjoying their fellowship with their friends and stuff. That being said, I am an entrepreneur, as it is from 9 to 5, or actually 24/7, frankly, but when I'm actually working, entrepreneur. I've run several companies. I currently own 2. One is a water vending business. We sell reverse osmosis water for 25 cents a gallon. That's a side hustle I started almost 25 years ago and still going strong. And then I have a firm named Willery, and the reason why we were at the HR Tech conference, why Marcus and I got a chance to meet, is that we provide payroll and HR technology consulting and staffing support, which primarily means this. We can help you find HR, payroll, and HR technology talent, whether it be direct hire, outsourcing, and everything in between. We have a very unique solution set around HR technology vendor selection. We can take a large group of information from you as a client. We can aggregate it. We can compare it against the marketplace. We can synthesize it down and help you become really clear on which solution set matches your organization and your functional needs. And then we also can help you implement the system when the time's right by providing client-side support. And I have had this crazy idea in the midst of doing that work and calling on HR and payroll and finance and IT professionals my entire career, that I would bore them all to death and put them to sleep by writing a book that I wrote called HR Like a Boss, that luckily SHRM published back in 2003, became SHRM's first ever #1 new release on Amazon. Don't tell Steve Brown or Johnny C. Taylor, because they wrote books before me. Whoops, I just said it out loud. And now I'm working on a book called Payroll Like a Boss that I'm co-authoring with Tammy Gillenwater, where we're doing the same thing about trying to inspire human resource and payroll professionals to think of themselves as business leaders first, drive bottom line results while delivering amazingly awesome HR and payroll.
Love it. Wow, what an intro, John. Thank you. So let's come back to the book. It's been a while since you started it, but where did the whole idea come from for HR Like a Boss? Was there something in how HR was showing up that made you feel like the book had to be written? Was there something broken or missing? Like, where did it come from?
It's a very complicated answer, and I will do it in less than 90 seconds because I want to keep your audience as engaged listening to me pontificate about my book. The emotional part of the story was my parents passed away in a short period of time, 2019 and 2020. It was a monumental, life-changing moment for me. And I had always thought in the back of my mind I wanted to write a book. I had friends like Steve Brown and Tim Sackett and Chris Dunn and fill in the blank of other HR influencers and thought leaders that do that kind of stuff. And I've met them, I spent time with them, I enjoyed my fellowship with them, and I realized I could do that as well, but I never got the inspiration. But when my parents passed away, I thought to myself, I got to get after my life. I got to get the things I wanted to get done. I created this bucket list of items, and at the top of it was writing a book. I actually started writing a book, Marcus, called I've Got It All Wrong, which is basically what I thought business success was like when I got into the business community. And then fast forward the tape 25 years later, my perspective of what business success was as a 50-year-old is different than it was when I was first starting out my career. But I couldn't get past the title page. I was struggling with the content. Maybe I just was not an author. And then my director of marketing was asking me about how is my new book coming along, because I shared it with her. She's an avid reader. She's a huge supporter of mine. Really appreciate you, Bridget Klein, if you're listening. Anyway, I share with her my frustrations. I couldn't get past very much than just the first page with the title on it. And she said, hey, I have an idea for you if you would be open to it. I know we've done this presentation in 2017, 2018, 2019 called HR Like a Boss. It was very well received when we did it in the HR and payroll communities. And you already have an outline. You have the agenda already from the presentation. My guess is it would be a lot easier. And all I heard her say was easier. And then from there, I took all the content that was in my presentation. I organized a table of contents. I started creating a writing plan. I hired an outside writing coach to hold me accountable. And roughly about a year and a month later, after spending every weekend writing at least 1,000 words, I ended up writing nearly 90,000 words, Marcus, and the book ended up being 74,000 words, which was very hard for me to believe as a first-time author. That was not 90 seconds. I apologize.
No, that's still impressive. So, wow, a couple of things. First of all, remind me, when was the book actually published?
October 24th, 2023.
2023. Okay, good to know. I'm sorry about your parents as well. I can see the older I get, the more I can relate with the understanding that we don't have a whole lot of time left and the idea of creating bucket lists. So I'll be curious to ask later on what else is on that bucket list. By the way, if you do go down the path of writing the book, I've Got It All Wrong, just come to me. I've got lots of content that I can share. So keep that in mind.
Will do.
So it's been a few years since you published the book. Let me ask you this. What is one belief about HR that maybe you've changed your mind about since you wrote the book?
And I'm going to answer that question with also clarifying what you asked me before about was there a moment or something inside of human resources that compelled me. There was in developing the presentation, which was about this mentality that human resource professionals are Toby from The Office, the character Toby from The Office. Yes. And they sit in the back annex, and they're exiled by their manager, and they're only there to do the silliest things. And eventually you become more obsessed with the Scranton Strangler than you do with delivering great human resources to your employees. Mm-hmm. That's what the general population of the world thinks of human resources. And when I spoke with them, the Gen Pop, the non-HR professionals in my community, and executive leaders that were not in human resources, I heard a consistent theme of them not delivering business results for our organization. They were more or less the compliance police. They were the hirers and firers, and the relegation of that responsibility of their duties was more or less a necessity, not a benefit. And I thought to myself, well, that doesn't really track with a number of the HR leaders that I know. It doesn't mean I didn't know a bunch of HR professionals that unfortunately were really bad at HR, and they did really bad things at their companies. As a result, they had poor cultures, high turnover, and continued on that bad perception of human resources. But there were a number of people that I knew that were amazingly awesome at HR. And the presentation was really about how we as human resource professionals could look at our roles as a business leader first. And that's a common theme inside of the book that just so happens to practice in the field of HR. That was the initial definition of HR Like a Boss. I'm a business leader first that just so happens to practice in the field of HR. That evolved to effectively connecting people to the purpose of your business and doing it in a way that's described as amazingly awesome. That's the Urban Dictionary. That's the PG-13 version of what Like a Boss means, is doing something in an amazingly awesome way. And I wrote the book to inspire HR professionals to look at their roles in a completely different way. Inspired them by our 5 sections of thinking differently, being different, being better, taking action, and making an impact. And we built a bunch of chapters in between those sections, centered around technology, centered around developing managers and leaders, centered around your talent acquisition responsibilities are really, really important. And what have I learned over time in the spirit of the experience of writing the book, luckily being able to meet thousands of people, doing keynotes and presentations and book signings and all that fun stuff, is that human resources is still one of the most misunderstood functions inside of a business. And I truly believe part of the reason that exists is that the job of HR is nearly impossible to be successful. And here's why I say that. If you look at HR and you Google it and you ask ChatGPT or Google or your favorite AI platform to define what HR does, you will get a laundry list of items, from hiring to onboarding to training and development to succession planning to maybe payroll, the benefits to offboarding, fill in the blanks. HR professionals are asked to do a lot of things. And I go back to what my dad would always say to me, John, if you want to be great at something, you got to focus on it. If you don't, then you'll be averagely well at a bunch of different things. And I didn't want to be average. And I think human resource professionals, frankly, Marcus, are set up for failure because they're asked to do so many things across so many realms that they have to have this functional expertise in a wide range of areas that have diverse levels of complexity, compliance requirements, fill in the blank. But to me, if I'm going to inspire an HR professional, if they're listening right now, focus on your business leadership skill first. Focus on being a great business leader because you are being paid by your employer, which is a business. It doesn't mean you can't prioritize your employees first, and you better do that as an HR professional. But what I have learned is that the job is so hard, and it takes somebody really special to do it incredibly well. And it's because of the diverse set of responsibilities.
A lot to unpack there. I want to come back to how you framed all of that. You framed it by talking about the job of HR. And obviously you wrote the book and it was published in 2023. And John, a lot's changed just in 2 years. So let's go down that path for a moment. And by the way, I was in HR. I was familiar with the 3 C's that nobody liked. Compliance, control, and constraint. I felt like that's who I was when people saw me coming down the hall and they were like, oh no, here comes HR. And I hated that. And so let's go talk about what the job of HR or the profession of HR is becoming. So, of course, we have to talk about AI. We're like 10 minutes in. We haven't brought up AI. That's like a record for me. Obviously, AI is changing a lot, not just in the function of HR, but I would argue in the function of any kind of managerial or supervisory capacity. I want to go back to your using the term compliance. So if you think about what the basic elements of management and supervision are, it's all about compliance. It's about making sure, John, did you take that required training class? Did you clock in and out? Are you compliant with your schedule? Are you following policy and protocol? John, you realize all of that can be lifted out and handed to AI to do all of that for us. It's funny. So I don't know if you were, when you saw at the HR Tech event, the CHRO from IBM spoke. Did you see her session?
I did not.
So it was actually quite fascinating. She talked about Ask HR. So that's IBM's kind of chat tool. And we were working with them, a decade ago with Watson and trying to create this, chatbot capability. And it was funny. So they just decided at one point, we are going to push all IBMers to Ask HR for any kind of initial question or request that they have for the HR function. I think this was in the late teens, right? And that's obviously before agentic AI and generative AI. And so they said, look, everybody has to do this. And it didn't go well. It was funny. She talked about their net promoter score of the HR function in IBM was like, 20 or something like that, which is good, right? And when they rolled out Ask HR and forced everybody to use it, it fell to like negative 20 or something. It went the wrong direction. But over time, they kept at it, and as agentic and generative AI came to fruition and they refined their capabilities, they now do everything through this tool. And their net promoter score today, John, is like 70 something, okay? And it was funny to hear her describe how they have moved like any kind of transaction to Ask HR. You want to transfer somebody? You want to promote them? You want to give somebody a comp increase? You do it through Ask HR. And I could like hear people audibly gasp in the audience like, oh, you can't do that. So this is a long-winded way of asking you, John, how do you see the job, the discipline of HR evolving if we assume that the majority of the promise of AI, there's a lot of hype, but I also have a lot of hope about what it might bring. How's that going to change the discipline of HR?
Staying on brand, Hope at Work is the name of this podcast. You got to keep that in mind. I know that's a critical part of your story and the fabric throughout. Here's the thing. I think it's a simple way to look at it. I pray that AI turns out to do all the things that you suggest, if not more, because it can get human resource professionals out of the things that make people dislike them so much, make them so misunderstood, allow the chat bot, allow the technology to do the, did you do this? Did you fill out your timesheet in an appropriate way? Did you need to do a performance review? All those things that are the checks and balances that create the misperception, or as you experience Marcus, oh, here comes Marcus, he's in HR, why is he in the room? Well, someone's going to get fired or somebody did something wrong. That's why the comparison to the principal's office is real, and probably why Michael Scott hated Toby from The Office, is a sense of it. If we can do that, it will allow human resource professionals to spend their time where they can add the most value, which is improving communication skills, building relationships, problem solving, developing executive leaders, aligning leadership teams together, creating strategy. The problem or the opportunity, however you want to look at it, is that we as a profession will need to evolve. Yeah. We will need to evolve away from task managers, away from ones that are making sure certain things are getting done, and we'll be leaning more into the strategy, into the thoughtfulness, into the creativity and innovation that I really feel like could be drastically more impactful to the top or bottom line of a business than it is to make sure that everybody checked the box and took this appropriate training or signed off on this form. Yeah, I agree. So the other event that I went to late last year was the Gartner HR Symposium, John. I don't know if you've been to that recently. It was really good, very robust, tons of sessions. But the basic theme that they brought to the surface was the discipline of HR is no longer about the workforce. It's about the work itself. Now, whether or not you agree with that, an interesting point of view. So here's my next question for you. You mentioned earlier that you also run, I didn't know you had a water vending business, so that's cool. Good for you. Love the side hustle reference too. But Willery, your HR consultancy, obviously you're doing work with a wide variety of clients. And as we talk about how the discipline of HR is evolving, what are you seeing in terms of those clients and their willingness to maybe embrace some of these new ways of thinking about the HR discipline and actually being disruptive in the way that, you know, the new discipline of HR actually functions? Are you seeing your clients welcome it? Are they resisting it? Somewhere in between? Well, overall, if I look at my client base and the community as well, I think there has not been a significant disruption inside of human resources for a long time, in my opinion. Yeah. There's not been that this is how it was before and now all of a sudden it's drastically different. I do think that we're leaning into an evolution and a transformation around how to better and more intelligently use our technology. And that was one of the main things we write about in the book, was leveraging tech. Tim Sackett was quoted in my book as saying the number one lacking competency inside of all HR leadership is technology, and it's not even close. And I truly feel like we as human resource professionals, if you're not on the bandwagon of leveraging your current HR tool that you have, or payroll system, or time and attendance, or open enrollment platform, or benefits, fill in the blank, and you're not understanding how that tech provider is embedding AI into it to make your job easier, my guess is you are behind the curve. I don't think people are going to get replaced by AI, but the ones that don't embrace it will get replaced by people that have embraced AI. And overall, I think that from that standpoint, if you're not leaning into tech and you're not leaning into ways to automate the things that can be automated that are taking you away from the more important parts of your job, again, employee development, attracting great talent into your company, building amazing cultures, getting your leadership team healthy, aligned, and well-trained, then you're missing the mark on the potential of what HR can do for a business.
Visionary voices, bold breakthroughs. This is Shally's Alley, where top recruiting minds spill their best-kept secrets live every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Raw, unfiltered conversations on sourcing, hiring, and the future of talent, where we ask the tough questions no one else will. Tune in and level up.
Yeah, love it. So after you finish the book, I've Got It All Wrong, maybe the next book could be Lean Into Tech, because I completely agree. I've also noticed it feels like there's been a bit of a tension brewing as the HR function not only is asked to possess and maintain more technical acumen, but also to become more strategic and data-driven. While at the same time, they're also, of course, being asked to maintain kind of the human aspects of work. So are you seeing the same thing? Like, I'll give you an example, John. I talked to CHROs, some that are more tenured, and they're like, I don't like the new tech because it makes it feel less personal, and we're supposed to be high touch, and you're telling people to just go to their mobile device and chat with something, and that doesn't seem right. So it feels like we're like on this balance beam, and people don't know where to go.
I just had this conversation with a friend that does a lot of work around power skills, soft skills, leadership development, whatever phrase you want to use. And here's my thought on all this, Marcus. I think that the more tenured generation that is bucking or doesn't necessarily like technology is slightly wrong. And I also think the less experienced professionals that are leaning 1,000% into technology, they're a bit wrong as well. I think there's a midpoint that allows us to have a balance between leveraging technology as well as our ability to communicate clearly, to be able to have a crucial conversation, to be able to look you in the eye, Marcus, when we talk. These basic fundamental skills, problem solving, innovation. I worry, that's probably a really strong word to use on a podcast, that we're going to rely so much on the tech that we're not going to be able to be critically thinking on things on our own. I think there's a marriage in the middle. There's a balance between how do we leverage the tech to make ourselves more informed and smarter, but then how do we use our own intelligence, our own personality, our own skills to be able to then move the needle and inspire people, drive results. Again, to me, the most successful people are the ones that have a functional or technical skill set that stands out, and they have a personality and an awareness of their emotions and how to manage relationships with other people, that they can communicate effectively and they can galvanize groups of people together. You've probably been around or seen, I'm an avid golfer. There's a very famous golfer named Mo Norman. He was the greatest ball striker of all time. If you've ever seen him on YouTube, he could hit a golf ball consistently the same every single time. But he wasn't a PGA Tour player because all he could do was hit the ball successfully. It wasn't a great chipper, wasn't a great putter. He would actually knock flags down in the middle of the golf course. Everybody would talk about him, how great he was, but he wasn't diverse enough in his skill set. And I think we as HR professionals need to find our technical or functional skill set that makes us great at work while we develop this soft skill, power skill, leadership skill. And I truly think that business, as generations evolve, there's going to be more and more need for how do I have a crucial conversation? How do I shake a hand in an interview? How do I make eye contact? How do I problem solve? Because I think the technology we're leaning too much into it and not allowing ourselves to problem solve on our own.
Yeah. So you said a couple things there that I want to come back to. First of all, I appreciate the fact that you referred a couple of times to power skills. I like that term better than soft skills. I do worry about the next generation. I've got two daughters that are in their early 20s, and the way that, they came up through the educational system, they didn't necessarily get a whole lot of exposure to how to be really good at emotional intelligence and communication and demonstrating empathy. And they were more interested in the screens right in front of their face. And the funny thing is, if we're going to automate all of the administrative transactional stuff, the only thing that will be left is us talking to each other, figuring out how to work better. So a little bit concerning there, a little worried, as you said. But when you think about, so you mentioned technical acumen as being really important, or Tim Sackett said that in your book. Is there any other specific skill or capability that you think the next generation of HR leaders are going to need to possess? Maybe that we as, former HR folks maybe wouldn't have dreamed of possessing. Anything in particular?
I'm going to go a little bit off of the bingo card for the first response, and then I'm going to give you something to think about, Marcus, in that sense. I believe that we as human resource professionals must lead by example, and in doing so, we must put ourselves first. Because a lot of human resource professionals are so selfless that over time they end up losing themselves in their work and in their responsibilities. I've spoken with so many of them that said, I've had to do all these things and be there for so many people that my gas tank is empty. And what I would recommend on the first thing is, let's get 7 hours of sleep every single day. Let's do something good for ourselves from an exercise perspective. Let's be conscientious of what we eat and put in our mouth, because that's our fuel that we give ourselves. And let's find a way to meditate or journal so that we can express ourselves in a way that relieves stress. I don't think we as human beings take well enough care of our own selves. You saying you've had a couple daughters, I remember vividly when my kids were born. Oh my gosh, those first 2 years of their lives, I didn't give anything to myself. I gave it all to them, and I was exhausted and tired, and my brain didn't work as well. And it was all because I wasn't eating right, I wasn't sleeping enough, I wasn't then meditating. Oh my gosh, if I meditated, I'd fall asleep. And all that stuff is important to prioritize your well-being. We can't talk about well-being as HR if we're not well ourselves. That's number one in a bucket. How do we do that? It's my word of 2024, which couples into my word for 2025, which is discipline. We as human beings must become more disciplined. We must recognize the things that are right and wrong. As a result, my word of 2025 is sacrifice. I have to sacrifice things that maybe at times I would want or that my instinct would bring me to, because it's a easier short-term feeling versus a long-term gain. I'm a big Atomic Habits 1% improvement kind of guy. You're never going to accomplish a major project in one day. You're never going to lose 15 pounds in one day. You're never going to likely meet the love of your life in one day. Just maybe you will, but wouldn't that be a great story? It takes consistency and discipline of doing the right thing over and over and over again. It's Warren Buffett's compounding interest, but on yourself, not on your financial portfolio.
So what's the word for 2026? Do we have it yet?
2020, sorry, I did the math wrong. 2025 was discipline. The word for 2026 is sacrifice. I'm doing bad calendar math here. Yeah, thank you.
Well, we just got into the year. That's okay. Good to know. And I can totally relate with that too. The older I get, the more I realize that physically I'm going to hurt one way or the other. I can either hurt by working out, and I don't enjoy it. It's not fun for me. Or I can not work out and be in physical pain and not feel good about myself. Either way, that's where the sacrifice and discipline come into play. So anyway, I like that. Okay, so want to wrap things up here momentarily, but let me ask you one kind of additional big question. So we talked about the need for HR to become more technically savvy, to use more data. So one of the areas that I'm going to be working in and spending a lot of time in 2026 and beyond is HR analytics and strategic workforce planning. And when I was at that Gartner event earlier last year, they talked about 85% of organizations do not have a strategic workforce plan. So why do you think that is? And are you starting to see organizations recognize that improving their data-driven decision-making processes makes sense?
I see this happening quite a bit inside of organizations that are really finding a great marriage between the human resource function and department and the other parts of the organization. I think where you still have that fragmentation, you have that split camp of, well, I don't really want HR in the room, you're going to get less workforce planning, you're going to get less strategy from a people perspective. What I truly feel is happening, and again, this train has left the station. Data and technology and AI is coming. It's not coming, it's here. And it's going to get even faster and louder and stronger. And if we in human resources are not finding a way to use that insight to help us make informed strategic decisions, I think the big reason why that number was 85% is that the vast majority of professionals that do what we do are reactionary. They're not proactive. And to me, strategic workforce planning is a strategic mechanism. It's a way by which we can, as human resource professionals, try to predict things in the future, and we can then plan around that. Like, as an example, if your CEO comes to you and says, hey, we need to double sales in 3 years. This is what I said to the street. This is what we're going to commit to our investors. And you sit there and say, okay, we're going to use the same sales force and marketing strategy for the next 3 years and the same people. It's like, well, wait a second. Do you have some major innovation in your product that all of a sudden is going to sell itself? Probably not. You have to look at the things that allow you to connect your people strategy with your organizational strategy. And I'm just not sure that many HR professionals have had the experience of doing that. Doesn't mean they can't. It just means that they haven't had the experience of doing it.
Yeah, I agree. And again, that move from reactive to proactive, a really important one. I don't know how much time you've spent in healthcare, John, but I've spent a lot of time in healthcare. I really enjoy it. It's one of those industries where there's intrinsic meaning in the work being done, so it's easy to find that purpose. But for more than a decade now, the U.S. healthcare industry has been attempting to transition from what they would call volume to value. So treating illness to preventing it. And they're about halfway through that transition when it comes to how they actually get reimbursed for care, of keeping a population healthy versus treating the illness. And it strikes me that what you're describing is what we need to be doing to maintain the health of the workforce. Instead of reacting to high rates of turnover, how do we maintain the health of the workforce so they never get to that point? So that proactive nature of the discipline of HR, I think, will become critical in the next couple of years.
Let me lean into that for a second. I know we're almost at time, but I've been reading a lot of books and content around longevity, probably because I'm getting older in life. I also found it incredibly fascinating. I have a couple family members that are in that line of work, and I find it incredibly unique. Again, here's an example, and I say this phrase, and I mean it on purpose. Let's steal from our employer in the sense of this. If we in human resources have the chance to change people's lives, if we have a chance to drive bottom line results, if we have a chance to improve employee engagement, if we have a chance to then, as a result, do something good in our community, we must lead by example. And that leadership comes into two places. Can we as HR, as I mentioned before, take better care of ourselves and then as a result help our employees take better care of them? Because if they then are more healthy, they're more fit, they're less stressed, they're going to do better work, but more importantly, it's going to transform hopefully into their personal life. They're going to be better fathers or mothers. They're going to be better brothers and sisters. They're going to be better aunts and uncles. They're going to be better daughters and sons. And that's where we have to steal from our time. And we're working so much, 78,000 hours of our lives. Why can't we learn these skills, these disciplines to take care of ourselves? Because employers want a healthy workforce because it drives down healthcare costs. It increases productivity. That's one example. The second is in HR, and we write about this in the book in Payroll Like a Boss, financial literacy and financial wellness is another critical trend that's happening in our space because we're just tired of it becoming a major issue for the vast majority of people living paycheck to paycheck, a job as a means to an end. Why can't we find a way to educate them, lead by example in our education of financial wellness, and change their life? Encourage someone to enroll in our 401k or be a part of the stock option plan or purchase the stock so that 20 years from now, when they probably aren't even thinking about that, they'll have a chance to retire. Greater than if they didn't enroll in that 401k, they didn't take that stock option plan. Marcus, maybe you know this personally. I know as well. My dad encouraged me strongly to maximize my 401k, and now I have money in there that I never even imagined that I would, because I saved it when I was 22, 23, 24 years old. That's the kind of things we in human resources and payroll can transform how people's lives are impacted outside of work because of things that we're teaching them in their daily job every single day. I could go on and on about this, but I really truly feel like health and well-being, financial acumen and wellness are two easy layups for us in human resources and payroll to change. But for some reason, we're just too busy making sure we're in compliance. We're too busy hiring and firing people, and we're not focusing on the larger picture items.
Yeah, you hit on why I got into this space to begin with and why I started the Hope at Work podcast, because we spend the majority of our lives, John, at work. And we have an opportunity to positively impact that time. And to your point, that can also seep into their personal lives. So love your point of view. What I've not done in the past that I'm going to make a point to do from now on is ask every guest at the end of the podcast, what makes you personally hopeful about the future of work?
I think at the end of the day, we have human beings that are at the center of it. And I believe as a whole that the vast majority of human beings are good. And I truly believe that as anything else in life, we've had all these constant innovations, all these technological advancements. AI is getting, it's the thing, the current shiny toy that's sitting at the bottom of the floor. And you're just curious about what it is. And it's something better than AI is coming along in a year or two from now. I guarantee that, or let alone a decade from now, who knows. But at the center of it are people. And I think if we can, as human resource professionals, as business leaders, as IT and finance, whoever the listeners are out here, can we use work as a way to become a better human being? Because we're going to work every single day in stressful situations, forced to interact with people that maybe we don't like or don't care about their point of views. Well, doesn't that sound like something that we could do around the Thanksgiving dinner table and be more civil, more kind, more caring people? I'm hopeful that work and people, this is why I'm so hopeful for it, is that the newer generations have figured out that they don't want work to be such an important part of everybody's life. And they don't want to work for the same company for 30 years. They don't want to do those things anymore. They want to go, I'll give you an example. I have a very close family member who's spending their summer not working and traveling the world. And will have a better memory of that than having spent a summer working. And I sit there and scratch my head and say, oh my gosh, that is so not the way I would do it. And then that made me think to myself, well, I'm jealous. I wish I would have done it when I was 25. Why wouldn't I do that? And I think the newer generations are figuring out how do we make it a little bit better for the next generation. And I think we can cheat off of our employers. We can steal from them, becoming better human beings at work, which transcends into our personal lives.
Love it. Well, it's not too late, John, for you and I to take the summer off. I'm just saying. Why don't we wrap
I'd
it
be
up?
down to play some golf, go fishing, read a book, write a book. I don't know. Work on my suntan. See if I can get my hair to blonde a little bit instead of go white. Is that a possibility? I don't know.
I like the white, man. I like the white. It's distinguished. Listen, speaking of the book, Payroll Like a Boss, when's that coming out?
April 28th, 2026. Super blessed to be doing that. Yeah, we're excited. Marcus, I'll actually be back in Las Vegas the day after. So on April 29th, I will be in Las Vegas at the largest payroll companies user conference for the mid-market. And we'll be speaking on Payroll Like a Boss twice on back-to-back days, before they have their fancy, fun networking event at around 5:15. And we'll be giving away 100 copies of each of the books after each one of the sessions. And it just so happens that is Global Payroll Week as well. So we've been very strategic about opening up the book, publishing it during that time with the hope that we will get as many eyeballs on it. And I'll end with this on the comment of that book. I was really humbled by the outpouring of support from HR professionals around the concept of HR Like a Boss. What I'm finding is within payroll, there aren't a lot of people advocating for payroll professionals. There aren't a lot of people that feel that that's a strategic part of a business. And we write in the book about why it is and how it can be, leaning into data and technology and insights around the number one and largest cost to any employer, which is your labor. And we celebrate them. We applaud them. We give them tools and resources to do their jobs in an amazingly awesome way. And I'm super stoked for the launch. I can't tell you how I just can't wait for April 28th, but I don't want to wish time away.
Understood. And don't you have a speaking tour coming up too? Where else are you going to be?
I'm going all over the place. I'm going to Amarillo, Texas. I'm going to Orlando, Florida a couple times. I'm going to go to Las Vegas 3 times. I'm going to Fresno, California. I'm going to Springfield, Missouri. I think there's 15 or 18 trips and 40 speaking gigs. I would say half of them are within driving distance of where I live, which is part of my deal with my wife. The other half are kind of across the United States, which is still probably not ideal, but I love to do it. I'll give you an example. I'm going to Amarillo, Texas in a short period of time, right around probably when this podcast drops, and I'm going to Paladora, which is the mini version of the Grand Canyon. And that's the one cool part about doing these speaking gigs. I go to see great people. I get to share my story, which I feel compelled and blessed to be able to do it. I either play golf or go to a place of interest, and then I go home. And I'm banking all these cool stories, and it's been a blessing for sure. People think I'm way smarter because I wrote a book, but I just had the courage, and I was silly enough to put my ideas out there into the stratosphere.
I love it. I love it. You're living a great life, John. Thank you for taking the time to be on the Hope at Work podcast. Looking forward to continuing the conversation with you.
You as well, Marcus. Keep doing what you're doing, man. I'm blessed to have gotten the chance to know you, and I can't wait to be back in Vegas hanging out at HR Tech.
We'll do it.